All right, so I'm talking to my friend Jordan, and I wanted to ask Jordan some questions because I would consider Jordan to be an expert on what I like to call kratom, kratom, and yeah, just what I want to know. Like we've already talked about this before, but just like for people who are listening, yeah, I want to know like how you found kratom and like what that looked like.
For sure. Yeah. So I used to be a horrible opioid addict. At my worst, I was doing like 50 Norcos every single day. I'm surprised I still have like a liver, honestly. I was popping them like crazy, found dirty pharmacists, found dirty doctors. Then there's an incident where I overdosed twice in 1 week, but then I also got into a low speed chase with the cops.
Low
I,
speed.
yeah, I was telling people it's like, well, I'm already in this chase. I might as not well like speed, like that was that was like my reasoning behind it. And I get pulled over by the gang task force unit, guns drawn. You don't reach under the seats. There's like 8 cops. They're ready to fire on us. My passenger was reaching under the seat, and I was like, okay, I'm basically dead. And I knew I was caught, like dead to rights. And I was just like, yes, sir, no, sir. They found heroin, meth, needles, everything in my car. And I remember sitting in the back of the cop car. I was like, God, if you get me out of this, man, I swear I'm changing my life type of thing. And I was working with special needs kids at the time. And I was like working, doing great with special ed kids, but I was smoking heroin in the parking lot. It was really, really like a very weird predicament. And lo and behold, they let me go. The cops let me go. They basically said, like, here's your second chance. Like, you listen to all our commands. Your passenger was a dipshit, basically. So we're taking him to jail. And then the following day, I overdosed. I did not keep my promise. And I remember hearing my parents crying in the hospital. And I knew I had to make a change type of thing. So I kept Googling natural ways to beat this addiction that I had. And Kratom kept popping up and popping up. So I went to the smoke shop a bunch of times, tried it. It did absolutely nothing for me. But I kept reading all these like great testimonies like online. And so I looked on Craigslist and I saw a guy selling it in the mountains. It was about an hour and a half from where I lived. And I drove up here, and that meeting changed my life forever. I tried the Kratom, and it's like I was myself again. And I hadn't felt that way in years and years and years. Well, fast forward, that guy's been my business partner, and we've built this like great company behind that. But my business partner saved my life, basically. He was my groomsman. I met my wife through him. We started having kids together. So I owe everything to Kratom. And then I just started researching heavily. And I noticed that what I was reading online wasn't corresponding with what the actual people were saying, or the vast majority of cases weren't saying. It was completely different. So then I started looking, well, who are the people researching Kratom? Like the people that are just dedicated to him, not just what the FDA says or what a doctor that is being told what the FDA says and repeating it word for word. Then I found the University of Florida. I found Chris McCurdy. I found the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and I just started reading everything that they were publishing. And over the years, I wouldn't say I'm the greatest kratom expert in the country, but I learned from them. There are people that are more educated from me, but I've dealt with so many people over the years, tens of thousands of people, and I think I've learned a thing or two for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think I'm personally I'm an autodidact, so everything that I know is 100% self-taught and me just being interested in things. And so
Hmm.
when I see that in someone else and it's like clear that they have a competent understanding of something, I just like really value that. And I'm the same way when it comes to like I refer to people who are, way smarter than me in many different ways and maybe like conventionally or traditionally educated and stuff, but then I really value people who they took it upon themselves to research things and to like look into stuff and then to like advocate in a responsible way. And I think that like that's what when I saw your content I was like, oh, I like that you're really advocating for informed consent, which like people think that that's just something that like doctors and clinicians should do, but like I was just talking to someone the other day and I think that like peers have a responsibility to just like understand the multifaceted nature of certain things and to be like, hey, here are potential downsides, here are positives, here's how you can like with substances, here's how you can maybe dose more responsibly, et cetera, stuff like that. But I was like, yeah, that's one of the first things I saw from you, and I was like, oh, cool. Like this is very different based on the content I've seen, about Kratom. And I mean, dude, this is just like kind of indulgent, just for, I'll post this on YouTube primarily, and
Hmm.
I think a lot of people who've never maybe tried it. There's all these videos of like, what does this feel like and stuff like
Of
that. So like,
course.
you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
what? And I'll give you my opinion, but what would you say that Kratom feels like? And obviously, there's different kinds, but like, what would you say it feels like for you, or maybe the first time? What relief did you get?
Yeah, so I remember, because I've obviously been through withdrawal a bunch of times, and it's
Yeah.
definitely not a fun place to be in. But for me, Kratom felt like it put a pause on my brain. Like I felt normal, and that's the best. That's all I ever wanted to feel what was normal. I didn't feel high. I didn't feel like loopy. To me, there's a big difference between like a boost in your mood and being high. When I think of being high, like especially for an ex-opiate addict, I'm thinking of like nodding out, like going in and out of consciousness, like so warm blankety, like it's like the whole world is in your hands type of feeling. This was like I'm still Jordan, but like I feel good. I feel good. That's the best way I can explain it. There are some types that give you energy, pep in your step. There are other types that, can make you more like relaxed and sedating. But I guess the best thing I can explain is feeling calm. I felt really calm for the first time in years. And I always tell people, Kratom isn't for everyone, but for the people that need it, it's everything. Like I try to always let people know, like maybe it's not a good fit for you. There are certain people that can truly benefit, but do I think the mass population can benefit from Kratom? Probably not, because most people weren't in the situation that I am or don't deal with these horrible, debilitating chronic pain issues or have PTSD. Just the average person out there might not benefit from Kratom like someone like myself can. But the way that it made me feel was just like Jordan again. And I didn't feel that way in years.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've heard other people kind of share that same sentiment, and for those that aren't familiar, I had never taken it ever in my entire life, and it was something that I was really only exposed to because I was vaping, nicotine, and would go to head shops and go to vape shops, and I would see these products, and I was always like, this just seems like mid to me, or like it wouldn't do anything. So I had like the opposite. A lot of people, they demonize it and stigmatize it as like
Of
this
course.
this terrible thing. To me, I was like, bro, this shit's probably mid. Like I doubt it does anything. And then I had some OGs that were like, nah, bro, like, like this can actually work for people, And so it was interesting. One of my good friends actually was like, dude, you should try it. Like, it's, even if you just want to do it recreationally, you should try it. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to always be this thing that's replacing a pharmaceutical. That's great, and it works. People definitely use it for that. But my introduction was like someone advocating for like recreational use of it, and someone who I trust a lot, and I like honor their opinion. And of course, my brain, just because of my programming, was like, nah, dude, like it has to be, I have to be in like a chronic pain flare up at like a level 10, and then I'll do that. I'll be willing to do that. But so that ended up being the first time that I did try it, because I was in pain, and that felt like a valid reason, which honestly, a valid reason to take anything is just that you want to do it, in my opinion. I'm sorry, like that's just kind of where I'm at, as someone who is a harm reductionist, and that is like a little bit kind of radical with my approach. But with that being said, yeah, my immediate reaction to consuming it was like, oh, this feels wholesome, is the word to describe
Yeah.
it. it,
Yeah.
it it was like, this feels wholesome, it feels holistic, it feels there's nothing about this that feels like too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that, to
Just
me,
enough.
yeah, it's like, this is not too much at all. And then this will kind of like segue into another topic, but so yeah, the first leaf that I ever tried was from Jordan, and it was because I was watching Jordan's videos, and I was like, yeah, this is the person that I trust to get this shit from. And then I ended up a little while after that, this will bring us to the next topic, which is extracts. I tried like a classic, OPMS extract, but what I did is I got a dropper, like a little milliliter dropper, and I took the tiniest little amount. So I was like, let me see what this even does. I was being very kind of cautious and careful. And then I didn't revisit it for weeks. And then I was like, oh, I have that. Maybe I should see if it's something that I like. Then it ended up taking a little bit more of it. And dude, it sucked compared to to the leaf, bro. I don't know. Maybe it's because I didn't drink the whole bottle. I have no interest in drinking a whole bottle of that because the serving is what, half or even a
It's
fourth or
like
something.
usually like 1/4.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I forgot to put my phone on silent. Let me do that real quick.
No, you're good, bro.
I'm getting all these messages that the power came back on.
Word.
And I apologize about the lighting. Obviously the power went off at my house. So one second. Let
No,
me
it looks good, bro. It looks
Okay.
good.
Yeah. So you drank how much of it? Just a dropper full of
No,
the
so
extract?
no, so my first time it was a quarter of a dropper, so less than a quarter of a milliliter, which is not even, that's lower than obviously the recommended dose. And then the
Yeah.
next time it was probably about a quarter of the actual recommended dose. And dude, it felt very it was like one note. It
Yes.
was one vibe. It didn't have that wholesome feeling to me. And I'm not like trying to demonize it. It just didn't have that same like full spectrum vibe.
Yeah.
Like as if you were to take, like, let's say you take a CBD and you're just taking straight CBD isolate, and then you take a full spectrum CBD with all these other minor cannabinoids and you experience the entourage effect, which I
Of
know like
course.
we've talked about. That's what it is, dude. And so yeah, it's one of those things to where I understand the application obviously, but dude, just as far as even the leaf felt better too, bro. It felt way more just full kind of body, if you will, as far as seemingly like better for pain relief and all of that, dude. So I was surprised because again, kind of the vibe is like, people should obviously be cautious with extracts, but I kind of had this feeling like, oh my God, it's going to be so strong that it makes the leaf seem obsolete. And it was the opposite. It made it like, I don't really see the point so much when you can, have the leaf, except for the fact that for people who have issues with swallowing
Yeah, or
powders.
gut issues. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's ways to get around that. But what you said
Yeah.
is 100% true because the extracts are just metragenine,
Yeah.
basically. Like, they're extracting it. It's kind of like there's a difference between drinking a cup of coffee and taking a caffeine pill. Those are both different experiences. It's the same thing with Kratom. There are 50 different alkaloids that all work together as like a symphony. Imagine you have a band with 50 members, and now you're taking out every single member of the band, and you have one instrument left, and you turn the volume up to 100. That's a much different song than the whole band playing. And you'll definitely get a better experience when you have that 50 member band. And Kratom, the alkaloids keep going up and up and up. At the last time I checked, it was 50. Next time it might be 75. It's so much more than just metragenine, even though metragenine is the main alkaloid. So if you have a Kratom leaf, 5% of that leaf is alkaloids, and out of those 5% of alkaloids, 66% are metragenine. It's like kind of like THC to marijuana. It's what makes Kratom Kratom. And when you are just extracting, like you said it perfectly, one note. It's very one note. When you want the whole song.
Yeah.
And most people benefit from hearing the whole song instead of one instrument on full blast.
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, it again, well, for one, it just really confirmed what I already kind of know to be true about things that are like full spectrum. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I've always said that because I'm a huge, cannabis advocate, even though I don't smoke anymore. That's something that is extremely, extremely important when it comes to therapeutic benefit.
Hmm.
And what's interesting though is that I assumed that because when we're talking about extracts, that because it's maybe just one note and it's concentrated, that it would have more recreational appeal. And that was not the case either for me at all. I was just like, I don't, it's like just comparing something that's inferior in my opinion. And at the same time, if you're watching this and you take extracts, then I love you and I support you, and that's great if that's something that works for you. I just think that something that I've also heard from you is that a lot of it is just lack of education and this assumption that that's going to be better because it's stronger. It's the same logic when we look at high percentage THC flower,
Mm-hmm.
and when people go to a dispensary, what do they ask? What is the highest percent? That's
Mm-hmm.
generally, if you ask bud tenders, that's what they're going to tell you. Is like the average consumer comes in and says, "What's the highest percent THC?" And then, in all honesty, I don't have any evidence to support this, but when you see kind of like, again, to kind of relate it to cannabis, when you see some of the issues with like cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, like the chronic vomiting that people are experiencing, more instances of cannabinoid-induced psychosis, more instances of just other issues. That's because you're fucking up the natural composition of cannabis, which used to be more full spectrum, but has been bred to this point of being, just high in THC, and then doesn't have a lot of CBD, CBN, CBG, and I feel like that's probably kind of what's going on in regards to just straight up metragenine extracts. Do you think that's accurate when it comes to why people are raising concerns about about extracts when it comes to like health or potential downsides?
Yeah, yeah, I can totally understand what you're saying. Most people though like drink the whole bottle. I think there's a
Yeah,
big difference between like taking like a little bit compared to the whole thing. I know we get a lot of people that are drinking, 6 or 7 of those bottles every single day. That's a much different experience. And when it comes to kratom, a lot of people think, oh, all these strains do different things, but when you lab test kratom, the results are always going to be different. There's going to be different levels of speciophyllene. There's going to be different levels of motrifonil, and these are different alkaloids in kratom. You only hear it's kind of like with marijuana, how you hear THC like a lot. And I said that's the main alkaloid in marijuana. In kratom, it's metragenine, but there are other supporting alkaloids that can benefit the whole picture. And
yeah,
when you only have one alkaloid, you're not getting the full experience of kratom. And you said something that was so true. You said wholesome. Kratom is like wholesome. That's the best way I can explain it. Like it's a very earthy feeling. Like, oh, this is what we're supposed to be taking. You know, this is something that could really benefit people. But I feel like when people are doing these really concentrated extracts and drinking so much of them, it's not. I don't even really consider it kratom per se. When I think of kratom, I'm thinking of just the whole leaf powder, the whole pitcher. And a lot of people, their experience of kratom are these isolated 7-OH pills, which we can talk about that later for sure, or
yeah.
these really concentrated extracts. It There's different levels to kratom, and I just don't lump it all into one thing, all into one lump sum, because I feel like they're all so different.
Yeah, I mean that's valid. I mean it's the same thing as like I wouldn't call like a hash rosin cannabis.
Exactly.
You can say like that's like a cannabis product, it's a cannabis extract, but it's like this is a completely different thing. And just so people know, I'm a huge advocate for like cannabis extract, specifically rosin, because of just the process and how it's made, and that it's made with ice. Usually if it's like hash rosin, it's made with ice water and then heat, so there's no like solvents involved, but that's a whole
Hmm.
other story.
Yeah,
But with that being said, yeah, I do want to talk about the 7OH and the other kind of like products that are popping up, but I also like, I think it's really important to talk about the reality of like propaganda that's being put out in
for
regards
sure.
to kratom and these claims that people are just dying from kratom. If you can, I want to hear you speak to how it affects the brain and why it's a lot, it's just objectively safer when it comes to respiratory depression,
Yeah.
respiratory failure. And if you can just like rant about anything within that, because I'm seeing a lot. There's just a lot of just straight up propaganda out there.
Yeah, for sure. So I would like to start that kratom. has been used in Indonesia going back 1,000 years. Like it's in their folklore. It's been documented for over 250 years. It was first discovered by this Dutch botanist Peter Corthals was when it was originally like documented. But if you go back in their history, kratom was used as currency way back in the day. So it goes much deeper than that. Um, but there's never been a single case of death over there. So does kratom magically become deadly when it crosses the border? You know, why over that line is it has it been used safely for so long, but here people are dropping like flies. That's at least what the media tells you.
Mm.
John Hopkins did extensive studies on kratom, and they determined that kratom was 1,000 times safer than traditional opioids and many thousand times safer than heroin or fentanyl. When it comes to respiratory depression, kratom doesn't activate the restin 2 beta pathways, which are in your brain. That's what causes respiratory depression. A lot of people have the false notion that, oh, kratom must be an opioid because it stops opioid withdrawal. Well, that's a pretty easy case to dismiss because clonidine, the high blood pressure medication, has been FDA approved for opioid withdrawal since I think like the 1970s. And a lot of people will say, oh, it's definitely an opioid because it has opioid-like effects. That correlation doesn't equal causation, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Kratom affects many different uh, receptors in the brain that opioids don't do, such as your androgenergic, your serotonergic, dopaminergic, and your adenosine receptors. That is way different. Kratom is not an opioid based on its botanical origin, chemical structure, or law, nationally or internationally. The World Health Organization had an opportunity in 2019 to schedule kratom worldwide, basically. So it wouldn't be allowed to be shipped anywhere because the FDA said was an opioid. And they kind of like looked at the evidence. They're like, it's not an opioid. It doesn't meet any criteria for scheduling. You know, the easiest way to disprove that it's not an opioid is it would have been grandfathered into the Controlled Substances Act. Every opioid automatically gets grandfathered in. I know our government is really dumb. We all know that. However, they're not dumb enough to not realize what's an opioid and what's not. These are the people that want kratom scheduled. 75% of the FDA's budget comes from big pharma. You know, so many people think, oh, I mean, we see big pharma commercials on TV all the time. Do you think someone goes into their doctor and be like, oh, I saw this commercial for this medication. I really want it. No, they do that so they own the media, so they can put whatever narrative they want out there. And when it comes to people dying, there's a toxicologist named Dr. Marilyn Hustis from Thomas Jefferson University. She's probably the most, I would say, the best toxicologist in the country. She specializes in drug deaths and how that works in pharmacology and toxicology. And there was these blood vials that were labeled kratom only death. And I don't know exactly how she got them. I heard her speak in Washington, D.C. at the Kratom conference, but I forgot exactly how she got them. But she was saying that 99% of all these medical examiners are extremely underfunded and they don't have the proper equipment to test for the novel psychoactive substances that a lot of people are taking. And these were labeled kratom only deaths, spewed over the media. Well, she tested them and all of them came back for novel psychoactive substances not detectable on standard tests. And she also mentioned that a lot of times if someone passes away and they find kratom in the home, they're only going to test for kratom. And if it comes back for kratom, even in the system, that they're going to label it the cause of death. She said was looking at some of these reports, and some of these people had kratom levels that were 2 capsules, 1 gram. The average person takes like 5 or 6 grams per serving, you know, and there's
Yeah.
a big difference between dying from kratom and dying with kratom in your system. You know, some of these kratom only deaths were car accidents. One gentleman was even in a parachuting accident. There was this one case that got the family was awarded, I think, like $2 million or something for a wrongful death suit. And a medical examiner testified saying the man was severely obese. He did methamphetamines for 15 years. His heart wasn't working very good. He would have died whether or not the kratom was in his system, and they still won the case. You know, it's kind of shady. There's this one trial attorney, and the Tampa Bay Times, they're a newspaper, a really big newspaper out of Tampa Bay, obviously, and they wrote this hit piece on kratom. Well, lo and behold, that trial attorney donated $400,000 to them before that story was sent to the public. You know, there's so much more than meets the eye. Has anyone ever died from kratom? Maybe, because people have died from ingesting too much water, too fast. However, like the evidence doesn't suggest that, and I can't find one case in Indonesia. I literally can't. And then these cases here in America, like there's so much that's being left out. How do we know it wasn't a contaminated product? How do we know it was an adulterated product? Case in point would be there was 9 deaths in Sweden from a company called Krypton, where 9 people died, and the FDA still counts these as kratom deaths. But lo and behold, there was odesmethyltramadol in there. It was a greedy company putting in this opioid that the consumers didn't know, and 9 people died. But the
Yeah.
FDA still counts those as 9 deaths.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think what ends up happening is it becomes this like honestly it's like this word of mouth thing that
Hmm.
is perpetuated by the media and different institutions, and then we have people who may have lost a loved one that don't honestly have solid evidence to support their claim, but yet they're in a state of grief and stuff, and so it's very
You can't
normal
blame
for
them.
yeah, it's like normal to do that, but it's been something over the years that I've had to address, within, just on social media and finding people who were kind of perpetuating the fentanyl and cannabis thing, which is scientifically impossible to smoke fentanyl. You have to vape it. People vape it on foil, which is not smoking, and
Oh,
there's
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Huh.
there's yeah, so that's a big one is and it's all within the same prohibitionist space, dude. It's all the same shit.
Wow.
But you see
Shows
it,
you what I know.
dude. I
I
mean,
believe that.
I
I
I mean,
believe that
bro.
100%. That's
Well,
crazy.
most
Okay.
people, I did too, bro. And then I like went. Shout out to homie Nate. He posted this thing that just showed like scientifically the boiling points, the flash points, and all of these different of fentanyl and these different analogs. And it was like, dude, you literally cannot. You can't light that shit, dude. It has to be, it has to be vaporized. And then the carts that were supposedly laced. The scenario with that was that, dude, carts they don't reach the high enough temperature to even effectively vape fent. So it's like if someone somehow put a shit ton into a J and it like got in their mouth, then like yeah, that's a thing. But this idea of passive exposure based on tiny amounts being on cannabis is just that's just not a reality. It's the same thing with like the touching fentanyl, propaganda and all those campaigns that were put out by law enforcement, which ultimately just leads to like hysteria and people actually getting their information from spaces like the DEA.
Hmm.
And it's all like that's why I'm huge in kind of talking about this in regards to kratom, because it's the same effort. What they want to do is either prohibit or overregulate, and that what does that lead to? I mean, it leads to lack of access and a bunch of other issues. I do not think that kratom needs to be prescribed by doctors. Personally,
Hmm.
I don't. I'm like if people want to advocate for that, that's fine. I don't want to restrict access to anything. I think that everyone should be able to consume any substance they want, including things that are seen as bad. And it's just that's I see a lot of people kind of calling for the regulation, which I agree with like regulating the practices when it comes to production
Of
and
course.
and standards when it comes to education and all of that. That's all super important. But it's just like just America and our institutions are so intense that like if you call for regulation, that leads to over-regulation and restriction, and then often prohibition. And
For sure.
I would just hate to see that with something that at this point is accessible to people. You know what I mean? And I also believe that people deserve complete autonomy when it comes to what they put in their body. And that means that they can also potentially harm themselves. You know what I mean? As you mentioned, you can drink too much water, bro, and you can literally die from, water toxicity. You could take a bunch of Tylenol and
Of
acetaminophen
course.
and die. It's just like we just have a paternalistic society and culture, and it's authoritarian. And there's this idea that we have to restrict people and protect them from themselves. What we do is the answer to that is just educating people, and that's like why I love what you do, bro, because there's a way to educate and still advocate at the same time, and when people can make their own decisions for themselves. You know what I mean? And so I just wanted to thank you for that, dude, because it's refreshing. And for those that are interested, I'm not sure how YouTube works with like I know there's been issues of mentioning certain businesses on YouTube, but go check out Jordan on, where are you at right now? I know that you've been given a lot of shit on social media with
Of
the
course.
algorithm messing with you, but you're still up. You're on TikTok
Yeah,
still,
for
right?
sure. So my New Hope Botanical page got taken down on Facebook. I had it for 6 years for drugs. That's why I took it down.
Yeah.
Instagram obviously got taken down. I'm gonna start a YouTube. I think probably today. Honestly, I need to get on it. But right now I'm on TikTok at the Kratom Ninja, K-R-8-TOMNINJ Ninja, Kratom Ninja.
Okay.
I've had like 10 different accounts. I always get banned, but if you search up Kratom Ninja, I'll definitely be there. I have like 3 accounts labeled Kratom Ninja because I'm always Kratom Ninja 1, Kratom Ninja 2, Kratom Ninja
Yeah.
3 because they always get taken down. But for right now, they were gonna ban my account last week, but I won the appeals. So I was actually like
Good.
super excited about that. But yeah, New Hope Botanicals is our company.
Nice. Awesome, dude. And yeah, and if anyone has any questions for me about my experience, with the products that New Hope has, I can tell you all about it. Keeping it kind of brief today, dude. Definitely, if you're down, let's do this again. If
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
if you want to do one for your channel, I'd love to do that. And yeah, that's it, y'all. I guess like and subscribe if you want to. And supposed to say that. All right. Much love, y'all.
Thanks, guys.